Good morning. You have to bear with me. I'm just getting over a cold, but super excited to be here. And I'm giving the strategy keynote today. So I'll step back a little bit. It's been great to see a lot of my peers and listen to their presentations, and I think this will build upon those and perhaps give you a little bit of a sense of how Comcast Business views this world. So before I jump in, whoops. Let me just start by saying, what is the intelligence economy? So the intelligence economy is where every process, from how we learn to how we connect, becomes driven by data, context, and adaptive systems. And I think whether you call it the AI world, the intelligence economy, the change economy, it's certainly the environment in which we're all living. So over the next 15 minutes, I want to explain how Comcast Business is making more possible for our customers in the intelligence economy, where AI, automation, and secure networking come together to reshape how we connect, protect, operate, and compete. Going forward, stores of knowledge, you may recognize this. This is kind of an early version of Encyclopedia Britannica, will all become commoditized. And so as we think about how AI disrupts all professions and businesses, at Comcast Business, our aim is to use modern tools and intuitively simple designs to help our customers make more possible. Debica should recognize this chart. But speaking of moving from information to outcomes through modern tools and intuitive simplicity, AI is rewriting business models in real time. So here's a quick example of what the intelligence economy looks like in practice. Two companies in the same education space. So Chegg on the left and Duolingo on the right. They both basically are online tutoring, online learning companies. The AI wave crashed into both. I think Julie said ChatGPT came out about 3 years ago. ChatGPT 3.5, I think, was introduced in November of 22, so right around 3 years ago. And one of these companies struggled, and one of these companies leveraged AI to deepen engagement and accelerate growth. Both companies integrated more intelligence into their operating fabric. However, while one used AI to add more knowledge, have a better data store, the other used AI to drive more engagement through gamification. So which of these companies figured out how to drive superior outcomes? Duolingo has really thrived, which is a little bit surprising, given that you can all learn how to speak a foreign language with ChatGPT. But it said we're not really about just bringing the knowledge of language training. We're about how to engage and deepen and kind of make people excited to learn. Chegg has really struggled. Chegg hasn't recovered, and the point really of this slide is not to call winners and losers, but to note the pressure businesses are under and how fast fortunes can change in today's intelligence economy. And I think we all probably feel this. But while we all feel this, maybe on a macro level, not so fast. As we've talked about, ChatGPT 3.5 launches 3 years ago, yet something like search hasn't really fundamentally changed. We still use Google. But in 8 more years, I would say all of us probably have seen how ChatGPT or Google AI mode has made us see that search will evolve to include AI agents that will transact directly with other AI agents at speeds and in ways that we can only still really imagine. So our customers need secure, adaptive infrastructure to make that future real. So networks, as we've all been kind of talking about next generation networks historically have been robust, but static, defined by SLAs, config files, and tickets. So imagine a world where an enterprise simply talks to their network, expressing intent in plain language. No great portals where kind of everyone flips switches and looks at computer screens, but just has a conversation with their network. That's what's meant by moving from rigid processes to intuitive conversations. The intelligent network isn't just autonomous, it's also aligned with business goals. So when we say we want to make the network intuitive, it's not because simplicity is the goal. It's because simplicity unlocks better outcomes. So our enterprise customers don't want to manage connectivity. They want performance, security, agility delivered without friction. So when I say just ask the network to perform, I mean that intuitive design is the lever that gets you there. So the intelligence in the network should understand intent and translate it into results. So teams can focus on driving the business, not managing the infrastructure, which I think as we all engage with our CIO customers, CIOs in the room, the life of the CIO feels increasingly as a business partner, not a manager of data networks. So you don't just define a network by speed and uptime anymore. In fact, we've heard kind of a lot of conversations today around latency, around bandwidth, around speeds. But that's really just the start. That's the first ingredient. You really define it by business outcomes. So performance, which includes things like capacity and latency, but also cost optimization, also service levels, also data gravity. Where does the bulk of the data sit in an organization, and where does it move to? So at Comcast Business, we're working to design enterprise networks that understand these goals, learn and adapt, and deliver predictable, measurable results in an always changing environment. So, here's a chart. We've seen lots of charts about data growth and data center growth. But, compute and data demands are just exploding again with highly variable traffic peaks and valleys, much like broadband the decade leading up to and through COVID. So if you think back up to the end of 2020, for the prior decade, every year bandwidth was growing somewhere between 30 and 90%. It's actually since then slowed dramatically. There's a lot of sense that AI and data centers will drive up that demand again, but the rates of growth that we're experiencing, at least over the last 5 years, pale in comparison to the rates of growth that really happened as streaming, as video content took off and drove huge increases in demand. And as service providers, we all know how to design networks for that scale, and we're doing it again for AI. Of course, with exponential growth, a 10% improvement today is much larger than a 10% improvement 10 years ago. But I think we all know how to handle improvements at this scale. Oops. So let's now talk about how to build the service part of the network. So this slide explains the invisible architecture that lets AI agents actually do something useful, not just think, but act. So we've been building out, and we've had a lot of discussion today about AI, APIs, automation, and the NAS components for some time. But those efforts have tended to be fairly siloed. But it's really the ingredients to make this happen. So MCP, Model Context Profile, allows AI agents to efficiently and directly reach into the underlying components, both to extract knowledge and execute tasks. So think about MCP as plumbing. You've got foundation models. They need to get data. They need to connect to APIs and connect to all the data stores to drive that knowledge. That's MCP. So while humans can talk to those AI agents, A-to-A protocols will soon enable much more efficient and rapid interactions between both first-party and third-party agents. So think email or conversations today. Think rapid agent-to-agent conversations tomorrow that will be in languages we can hardly decrypt, let alone understand. So I'll have my agent call your agent, and we'll work out a deal. Meanwhile, let's go get a drink and congratulate ourselves on that deal. So the result? So with legal and procurement, AI agents directly in the loop. So if we can add our legal teams and our procurement teams into that AI agent loop, imagine what a great deal that will be. So I'll see you at the bar later today. So now let's talk about business outcomes. So just take a second and read this chart, and I'll ask a couple polling questions. This was a recent study by MIT that got a lot of press. You've probably seen clips of it. So I don't think it's this bad, but I think if you've had really great success and you're honest with yourselves, you probably haven't been trying hard enough. So quick show of hands, and I've got other answers on the next page. So 2 questions. First question, A and B. Who thinks our AI ROIs are A, easier and faster than expected, or B, harder and longer? So who thinks AI ROIs are easier and faster than expected? Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, handful. Who thinks they're harder and longer? Probably 5 times that many, and probably half the group isn't quite sure. So one more question then, give everyone a chance. So who thinks the challenges in achieving those ROIs are more a matter of A, leadership, or B, technology? Leadership or technology. So who thinks A, it's AI results fundamentally are leadership challenges? How about technology challenges? Definitely more leadership challenges, which is interesting because we're a pretty technology-focused group. So there was a recent Wall Street Journal Tech Council, mostly CIOs and business leaders. Same questions, agree or agree. Who thinks it's a leadership challenge or technology challenge? 90% of CIOs think it's a leadership challenge. 84% thinks ROIs are taking longer, and about half think ROIs are harder. So I think that's roughly in line with this group. We talk a lot about technology. The issue, though, is how do we think about the business outcomes we're trying to achieve, and then how do we bring the technology that we need to see, to enable those business outcomes, and stop thinking about your customers, start thinking like them. For us, it always starts, and I think some of the other speakers mentioned this too, it always starts with what our customers are trying to achieve. Take a national quick-serve restaurant chain we're working with. They wanted to enhance their in-store video analytics to improve service speed and security, but without driving up their compute costs. So by designing an intelligent, intuitive network that automatically routes workloads between edge locations and the cloud, we help them analyze video locally where it mattered and process data centrally where it didn't. So the results, faster insight, lower cost, simpler operations. It's not kind of an edge versus cloud, public cloud versus private cloud. It's how do we think about the problems customers are trying to solve, and how do we design a network to optimize those. So that's what it means to think like your customer. Start with the outcome and let the network make it possible. In today's world, probably would be malpractice to propose a network solution without really understanding these types of issues. We've also, maybe this will be somewhat controversial, but we've talked a lot and heard a lot about latency today. So how many conversations have you had with folks who say edge compute is now necessary for AI and the old cloud-based SaaS model is obsolete? AI fundamentally changes things, and the issue is latency. So for some business problems, high-frequency trade execution happens in hundreds of milliseconds. We have mobile and fixed-line network transport that happens in 5-kilometer distances at about 1 millisecond. Fiber transport across the country, one way, is about 30 milliseconds. Human reaction to sound is 200 milliseconds. A blink of an eye, about 300 milliseconds. It takes about 400 milliseconds to just say hello. So I would say latency hasn't, has network latency significantly affected or stunted the growth of ChatGPT so far? Latency hasn't slowed AI's rise, and maybe the speed of light someday will become too slow. But the real constraint isn't physics, it's economics, deciding whether to move the data to the compute or the compute to the data. In some examples, latency is absolutely critical. In the bulk of the things that we use today as consumers, latency hardly matters or hardly kind of impacts our experience with AI. So at Comcast Business, we put it all together this way. We start by ensuring we can connect everything everywhere all the time. Heard that movie? The network intelligent service architecture directs traffic to achieve business objectives according to the intent we discussed. So those 4 things: performance, cost, security posture, data gravity. And then critically, we direct traffic to and from data generators and users to the optimal compute and storage locations, which will change dynamically as desired business outcomes, workloads, and economics adjust. And that will be a mix of public cloud and multi-cloud management, colo and neo cloud, private cloud, network cloud resources. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's a, what do we need to solve for business problems? So will all this transformation happen overnight? Nope. But in 10 years, the world will be vastly different from what we can envision it will be 2 years from now. And every innovation, including in AI, robotic autonomy, quantum computing, will rely on intelligent, adaptive, intuitive networks. And those networks will require aligned orchestration, the flow of data between everything, everywhere, all the time, with compute and storage occurring at many points along that journey. So that's what we're excited to be building at Comcast Business to make more possible. Thanks.